Did you know that some pet owners have faced tragic and disturbing fates at the hands of their own beloved animals? While pets are usually our best friends, there have been shocking cases where these bonds took a terrifying turn. In today's video, we'll explore 5 of the most unsettling deaths where owners were unexpectedly killed by the very pets they trusted and cared for. These chilling stories will make you think twice about the animals we bring into our homes. So, without wasting our time, let's dive into our story number 1. Story 1. On July 17, 2006, in the peaceful town of Salem Township, Pennsylvania, 50-year-old Sandra Piovesan entered the enclosure of her 9 wolfdog hybrids, completely unaware that her life was about to end. Sandra had been devoted to these animals for years, but recently they had become more unpredictable and aggressive, even killing one of their own. Still, Sandra didn't realize just how much danger she was in. Sandra had been keeping wolfdog hybrids for nearly a decade. These animals are a mix between domestic dogs and wild wolves, making them both loyal like dogs, but with the unpredictable nature of their wolf ancestors. Experts often warn that hybrids can be dangerous because they retain strong instincts, which can make their behavior unpredictable. But Sandra loved them and treated them like her family. She kept the hybrids in a large enclosure in her yard, providing toys and space for them to roam. They weren't spayed or neutered, so the pack grew over time. And despite several warnings from authorities, Sandra didn't have the right permits to keep these animals. Sandra's neighbors were concerned. The smell from the enclosure was awful, and there were rumors that the animals weren't vaccinated. They were restless, and some neighbors worried that something bad might happen. Sandra, however, was dedicated to them, often entering the enclosure to feed them and spend time with them. She believed she understood their needs, even though others warned her of the risks. That morning, Sandra was supposed to meet her daughter, Crystal, for breakfast. When Sandra didn't show up, Crystal went to her mother's house, only to find a devastating scene. Sandra's body lay inside the enclosure, covered in injuries from the wolf dogs. She had been attacked by the very animals she loved. When the police arrived, the animals were visibly agitated, pacing along the fence of their enclosure. To safely recover Sandra's body, the authorities decided to tranquilize and then euthanize the hybrids. The autopsy later confirmed that Sandra had died from injuries caused by the animals she had cared for. Many who knew Sandra were heartbroken, but not entirely surprised. Some had warned her that the animals could turn dangerous, especially since wolfdog hybrids can be hard to manage. One of her close friends believed the attack may have been caused by a dominance issue within the pack, where one or more of the animals tried to take control. This tragedy brought attention to the risks of keeping wild animals as pets, emphasizing the need for stricter regulations and greater awareness of the dangers involved in keeping hybrids and other exotic animals in domestic settings. Story 2. On March 5, 2019, in the peaceful village of Zov in eastern Czech Republic, a tragic event unfolded when 34-year-old Michal Prek entered the enclosure of his pet lion. Unfortunately, he didn't make it out alive, putting a grim end to his unusual hobby of keeping wild animals in his backyard. What exactly happened that day? Michael was known in the village for his unusual pets: 2 lions, 1 male, and 1 female. He had bought the male lion 3 years earlier from Slovakia and added the lioness in 2018. He kept them in homemade cages on his property, which he built without the proper permits. Despite complaints from his neighbors, who were scared of the lions, and multiple fines from local officials, Michal refused to part with his exotic pets. He even walked the lions on a leash through the village, alarming many residents. One incident in 2018 particularly upset the community when a cyclist collided with Michal's lioness during one of these walks, causing injuries. Although the case was handled as a traffic accident, it added to the growing tension. Michal's neighbors felt uneasy about the situation and wanted the lions removed, but the authorities faced challenges. There weren't enough places to relocate the lions, and since Michal didn't mistreat the animals, the authorities couldn't take more serious action. This left the community in a difficult position, with everyone wondering if the situation would eventually lead to disaster. That fateful morning, Michal's father discovered his son's body inside the lion's cage. The enclosure was locked from the inside, which suggested that Michal had entered willingly but was unable to leave. His father immediately contacted the police. However, retrieving Michal's body was a dangerous task. Lions are apex predators and can easily overpower a person, so the authorities had no choice but to make a tough decision. For the safety of everyone involved, they shot and killed both lions, including the lioness, who was later discovered to be pregnant. The incident shook the village, but it also brought some relief to the frightened neighbors. The mayor of Zov, Tomasz Koku, expressed that this tragedy might finally lead to stricter regulations on keeping dangerous animals as pets. In response, the Czech government began considering changes to the laws regarding the ownership and breeding of predatory animals to prevent similar accidents in the future. Michael's tragic death highlighted the risks of keeping wild animals in captivity, especially in non-professional settings. It raised important questions about human safety and the responsibility of owning such powerful creatures, pushing for more oversight and stricter rules to prevent these situations from happening again. Story 3. On August 25, 2017, 31-year-old Dan Brandon was at home in Church Crookham, Hampshire, spending time in his bedroom with his collection of exotic pets, including 10 snakes and 12 tarantulas. Dan had always been passionate about reptiles, and his favorite was Tiny, an 8-foot African rock python he had raised from a small snake. Meanwhile, downstairs, his parents were preparing dinner when they suddenly heard a loud thud from Dan's room. They called out to him, but there was no response. Worried, Dan's mother, Babs, sent her husband upstairs to check on him. When they entered Dan's room, they found him lying unresponsive on the floor. Tiny was nowhere to be seen, and Dan's parents quickly realized something had gone terribly wrong. Paramedics were called, but tragically, Dan couldn't be saved. Dan had kept reptiles since he was 15 and was well known for his love of exotic animals. He had a deep bond with Tiny, but African rock pythons, despite being non-venomous, are powerful constrictors that can be unpredictable. They kill by wrapping around their prey and squeezing until the animal can't breathe. Dan's bond with Tiny had never made him feel unsafe, though in recent times, he had stopped draping her around his neck due to her growing size and strength. When Tiny was later found curled up under a box in Dan's room, an investigation began to piece together what happened. The coroner's report revealed that Dan had died from asphyxiation. There were no bite marks or signs of an attack, leading experts to believe that Tiny had likely coiled around him out of instinct, possibly in response to feeling startled or threatened. Experts like Professor John Cooper, a reptile specialist, explained that although Dan was experienced, keeping large constrictor snakes comes with risks. These animals operate purely on instinct, and while they might recognize their handlers, they don't show affection in the way domestic pets do. The tragic event underscored the dangers of handling such powerful creatures, even for those with years of experience. Dan's family was left searching for answers, but the full circumstances of his death remain unclear. Some experts even questioned whether Tiny was responsible, as evidence was limited, leaving a sense of uncertainty around the exact cause of Dan's untimely death. Story 4. On a quiet Sunday, October 4, 2009, Kellyanne Waltz was getting ready to clean the cage of her bear, Teddy. It was something she had done countless times before, so she didn't think twice about it. Even though Teddy was a bear, Kellyanne treated him like one of her pets, but that day, Teddy wasn't acting like the tame animal she knew. He was behaving more like a wild predator, and Kellyanne was about to experience just how dangerous he could be. Kellyanne, a 37-year-old mother of 2, had always been an animal lover. Originally from Massachusetts, she and her husband Michael moved to Ross Township, Pennsylvania, where they settled down on a large property and brought with them their collection of exotic animals. These weren't just household pets. Their home was filled with lions, tigers, cougars, leopards, and a black bear named Teddy, which they had purchased back in 2000. Some of their neighbors were scared of the animals, but others found the collection fascinating and often visited to see them under Kellyanne's careful watch. Over the years, the number of animals shrank, leaving only Teddy the bear, a tiger, and a mountain lion. On that fateful Sunday, Kellyanne entered Teddy's enclosure, a sturdy steel and concrete cage measuring 15 by 15 feet. Teddy, a massive 350-pound bear, was used to Kellyanne's routine. She would distract him by tossing dog food to one side of the cage so she could clean the other. It had always worked, until that day. Something was off. Teddy's behavior had shifted, possibly triggered by the approach of hibernation season. He attacked Kellyanne, catching her off guard. Kellyanne's children, horrified by what they witnessed, ran to their neighbor Scott Caston's house, desperate for help. Scott, a local schoolteacher, at first thought a wild bear had attacked Kellyanne, but quickly realized it was Teddy. He grabbed his .357 handgun and rushed to the Waltz's property. When he arrived, he saw Teddy standing over Kellyanne, who appeared to be unconscious. Teddy noticed Scott and began moving toward him. Fearing for his life, Scott had no choice but to shoot the bear. A single shot to the head killed Teddy instantly. Scott called 911, but by the time help arrived, it was too late. Kellyanne had died from the attack. The tragedy left the community in shock. Kellyanne, known for her kindness and love for animals, was deeply mourned. Her funeral was held at New Covenant World Outreach Church, where many people gathered to remember her as a caring mother, an animal enthusiast, and a beloved part of the neighborhood. In the aftermath, it was revealed that Michael Waltz's permits for keeping exotic animals had expired over a year before, but the lapse had been considered minor, and inspections had shown no safety issues. Despite the secure enclosures, Tim Conway from the Pennsylvania Game Commission stressed that wild animals, no matter how well kept or familiar, can never be fully trusted and can act unpredictably. Story 5. On September 26, 2012, Terry Vance Garner, a 69-year-old farmer from Oregon, went to feed his hogs, something he did several times every day. However, this time, he didn't return home. When his family went to check on him, they were met with a shocking discovery. His dentures and some remains were found in the hog enclosure. Terry was a well-regarded member of his community, known for his good nature. He was a Vietnam War veteran, and the experiences he had during that time left him with deep emotional wounds. Terry battled post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, and he found peace in his farm and the animals he cared for, which gave him a sense of purpose. He was dedicated to his animals and spent a lot of time with them, treating them with kindness. After a previous incident where one of the hogs bit him, he chose to forgive the animal, highlighting his compassionate nature. While domestic hogs are generally less aggressive than their wild counterparts, they can still be dangerous. These animals can weigh over 700 pounds and possess strong jaws, making them capable of inflicting serious harm. On the day of the tragedy, something unexpected happened. After several hours passed without Terry returning, a family member discovered his dentures and parts of his body in the pen, suggesting that the hogs had consumed the rest of him. Given their size and strength, it was not hard to see how they could have caused fatal injuries. Authorities were called in to investigate the horrifying scene. The circumstances surrounding Terry's death were puzzling. KZ County District Attorney Paul Frazier speculated that Terry might have suffered a heart attack, causing him to fall and making him vulnerable to the hogs. Another possibility was that the hogs may have accidentally knocked him over, leading to the fatal incident. While foul play was considered, there was no direct evidence supporting that theory. A pathologist was unable to determine the exact cause of death, prompting further examination by forensic experts. However, clear answers remained elusive. Terry's family not only faced the pain of losing him, but also the uncertainty of never fully understanding what happened. This tragic incident underscores the inherent risks involved in working with large animals and highlights the need for caution and respect when handling livestock, whether domesticated or wild.